This episode is presented in partnership with Airbnb. Y'all ready to celebrate independence in style? Get yourself a guest favorite spot and make your summer memories in one of the most loved homes on Airbnb. Now, let's roll.
I just felt like I was living a lie, kind of trying to tell this like shiny, happy, positive story. And you start to make yourself sick over it. Like you feel sick in your gut.
And so when he said, hey, I want you to be my girlfriend, like did he say that? Did someone come to you and say that? Like how did that even go down?
You know, I didn't have any concept of duality. I thought if you were old, you must be mature.
He's out there being messy with the girls?
He was, pulling the strings there and really pitting people against each other and things like that.
Was he kind of like Shady Boots? Like what was he?
100% Shady Boots. I love
At
that.
70?
I didn't have anywhere to live, so I was like, I should give this a try.
Yo, that is so real. I live for the realness.
How it was.
Okay, y'all, today's guest is someone who flipped the fantasy on its head. You think you know Holly Madison from the glitz, the Playboy parties, the reality shows, but baby, that's only the surface. Holly has been telling the real story, the one about power, performance, and what happens when you stop pretending everything's perfect. She's a best-selling author, a mama, a survivor, and now an advocate for using her voice to expose the truth behind the fantasy and what it cost her. And let me tell you, she does not hold back. Baby, this is Keke Palmer, and baby, this is Holly Madison.
Hey!
How are you? You look so fabulous.
Thank you, so do you.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you. I wore the worst shoes for a walkout. I love these shoes.
They're so cute.
Thank you. I've had them forever, but I feel like they just like stretched out a little bit, so I've been like bracing myself walking.
Oh my gosh, yeah, when you got to run in the two big heels.
Yeah.
We've all been there. How you doing? How have you been?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be doing more of the podcast. We had to take a little break because I'll be having like 12 jobs.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be here and to be
Fitting
talking with you. Now, I think the fun thing when I was getting ready for this interview is so many people have many different ideas about you. I mean, there's Holly Madison, and then there's Holland Sue Cullen. That's your full real name. And you were born in Oregon, lived in Alaska, back to Oregon. So when you think about who people think of you and who that girl is, what would you say the biggest difference is?
I think sometimes people have an idea of me that's really one-dimensional, just like a Playboy Bunny who's always in pink or something like that. And I have a lot more, a wider variety of interests and things like that. But I think like my core following, they know me, so I don't really feel the struggle I used to feel of like, I want to be understood as much anymore. So
I think there's also this idea too, when you get to be a Playboy Bunny or do anything that's based off your beauty, the idea is that you've been beautiful your whole life or that you felt beautiful your whole life. Would you say that was your experience? Like, or that you felt people thought you were beautiful? Did you feel you were beautiful?
I don't think so. I feel like beauty is more something that's affected with me. I more made myself look this way, and it's kind of like, it got me where I wanted to go, and it's kind of a hobby now. It's just, what I like to do to make myself feel good, but it is what it is. It only goes so far.
At what age did you discover beauty as currency?
I don't know what age I discovered it as currency, really. I mean, maybe in high school you notice that like you're gonna, pop off on the cheerleading team a little bit more if you look the part or whatever. But when I was a little kid, I was given this set of Marilyn Monroe paper dolls when I was like in fourth grade.
Come on, paper dolls. I used to love the paper dolls.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this paper doll book, it had a whole bio, her whole life story on the back about her mysterious death and everything. And all the outfits were from her movies. And I was just fascinated with her story and her look and her clothes. So I think that really started like my love affair with everything, cosmetic and fashion.
Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think about Dolly Parton. I worked with her once and I was just like, we would be in rehearsals, just not even on camera, and she would be perfect at all times.
Aww,
and I'm like, Dolly, like, how do you do that? I just love you so much. And she was like, well, darling, one day I said, that's who I want to be. And I just did it. And I'm like,
so
damn. But it's so true. I think sometimes we look at it superficially, but it does also make you feel good when you know that you show up and you're doing your best. And then it's interesting because people respond to it differently. I mean, you moved to LA to college, you worked at Hooters as a Hawaiian Tropic model to pay for your tuition. So beauty, I mean, at that point, you knew it could be a way to help you actually succeed. What was that like?
Oh, 100%. Well, for me, what it turned into was trying to do too many different things at once. It was me trying to get good grades to keep my scholarship, but also trying to work to pay the bills and trying to audition and trying to look good and all the things.
Yeah.
So it was too much, but it was really important to me. And that's what I really wanted, was to like have the substance and the schooling, but also do the fun stuff and, live that out. So
yeah. What do you think the most challenging thing was about tying your career to the way you looked? I'm sure it might have changed over time,
Yeah, I think more than anything, it was probably more of a distraction for me, always chasing that look and maybe not focusing on more of the substance that I could have.
Yeah.
Maybe, if I'm really thinking about it. Never really thought about that before. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't, I mean, you look, I mean, so many people have done it and obviously still have so much more to back them up. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it does what you said. Sometimes it can make people look at things one-dimensionally. It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and I think when you get caught up like I did and just chasing an aesthetic and trying to look perfect and trying to like please a certain person, you know, you're just chasing this thing that's never ending. You're never happy with it. So it turns into a real waste of time after a while.
Yeah, and I'm sure so much of that was obviously, I don't know if it was exasperated or if it would be like a more emphasized, I'd say, when working in the Playboy Mansion at 21.
Yeah, 100%.
That entry point to that life. I want to know about your first experiences. Like, how did you hear about it? How did you meet Hef? Like, what was happening at 21-year-old Holly at that point?
Well, I knew about Playboy just because there were so many women who had been playmates and were famous in the 90s, like Anna Nicole Smith or Pamela Anderson. Yeah, I love her. And, you know, so I wanted, you know, to be in the magazine, and I got invited to a Playboy party, which back in 2000 was like the cool party to go to, like the hard to get into party. So I was working as a Hawaiian Tropic model at an event, and Hef's doctor came and said, I want to invite all these girls to the next party. So I was super excited. Yeah.
What type of thing they had turned up?
Well, it's funny you say, 'cause there's some rumors, but I mean, I can't speak on that.
The doctor's checking out the clients?
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of Hef? And how old was he at that time? I know you were 21. How old was he?
He was like a 75 or something like that, 76. Yeah, but I was in awe of him. You know, I thought he was this amazing person who had created so much and done so much. And you go to these parties, and I got invited also to like the pool parties on Sundays, which were a lot smaller, and it was just like his closest friends. Everybody there is so in awe of him. And, you know, I just thought he seemed like such a gentleman and so interesting. So, you know, I fell for him right away.
What did you feel like, looking back, or maybe even then, what was the vetting process? Like, obviously, the doctor introduced you, you went to that first party. How many parties or how many events did you see him at till it became like, I'm his girlfriend now?
Quite a few, and I wouldn't have any real deep interactions with him. It would just be like, oh, hi, how are you? And, you know, it's somebody you would see like every weekend just briefly. But you know, I was young, and I kind of got the impression that I was getting to know him a little bit. And, you know, of course, when it's a big, powerful person you look up to, you start to only want to see the good things, you know? So it was a handful of times, but, you know.
And so when he said, hey, I want you to be my girlfriend, like, did he say that? Did someone come to you and say that? Like, how did that even go down?
Well, I was invited to go out with him and the girls one night, because they would go out to clubs a couple times a week, and he had multiple girlfriends at the time, and I knew what that meant. And even though I really liked him and the brand and everything, I wasn't like into doing that until one day I didn't have anywhere to live. So I was like, I should give this a try.
Yo, that is so real. I live for the realness.
How it was. Exactly,
because I mean, especially at 21, it's like he got everything. You know what I mean? It's just a couple of girls, some of them cute.
Yeah.
Why not? We all a family. You know, I can see how that can easily, especially at 21. When I think about me at 21 and what I thought was made sense, it's like anything went, you know, because you're still kind of kid a little bit.
Yeah, and it's something that had been sitting in the back of my mind for a while, and this was happening in my life, and I was up there at a pool party, and one of the, you know, bartenders said, oh, one of the girlfriends just moved out. There's a new spot. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this crazy
I love this. I'm doing this crazy Now, at that time, did you think about this is love, or did you just think it's survival?
Well, it was both. I knew I really liked him in the beginning. I wouldn't say love because I didn't know him that well, but it turned into that quite quickly. You know, we bonded really quickly. You know, I was always the one who was like by his side for all the dinners and all the movies and things like that. So I didn't like the fact that there were like multiple partners in the relationship for so long. But other than that, you know, I felt at the time, and obviously, you know, I was very young, and I wouldn't feel this way now. But, you know, I felt very much in love for sure.
Wow. So let's talk about the unspoken rules of the mansion, because I've heard a lot of different things with you guys having to go out.
I still hear different things these days. There's still stuff coming out.
You guys having to sleep together, you having to upkeep a certain look. Like, so what's real? What's true? What are the main points that you feel like you experienced in that, you know, relationship?
You know, a lot of it's tricky because, like you said, a lot of it was unspoken. Like, you would move in, and I would think, you know, when you're like 19 to 22, like you think you're a badass and you understand everything.
Yes,
so I thought
really
from
think
like
that.
yeah, so I thought from like the outside looking in, going to these parties and kind of seeing him interact with his girlfriends here and there. Like I thought I knew what it was going to be like. I thought I knew the whole drill. But I moved in and then I realized like I don't know what the schedule of this place is. Like I knew they had a curfew. Like they had
curfew?
they had to be in at 9 o'clock. Which at that time, even though that's weird and I always get the weirdest looks when I tell people that, I was like, when I moved in, I was like, well, I'm not going to be here very long. The girls never last very long here. And, I'm just going to enjoy this for what it is. I'm trying to get like.
And the house was nice, I'm sure.
Yeah. And
So
I was like trying to get a
9.
leg up in the world and, whatever. I wasn't trying to like, whatever. So that wasn't even the weirdest thing to me at the time. But then you get into little things like, okay, well, this is the schedule and this is how you're supposed to act, or he'll freak out. Or I thought it would be fine for me to have like a day job during the day. Found out that wasn't the case. So it was a lot of stumbling around my first 6 months to a year, just trying to like not get in trouble. And
who came and told you that? Like who was the person that was saying, hey, no job?
Him. Yeah, that turned into a fight, and it was drama, and he said he was jealous of the job and all this stupid stuff. But nobody tells you because like you move in and like the other women, like they seem like they're supportive of you to the point, but they kind of don't want to help anybody else out either. So you're just kind of like walking around in the dark, so to speak.
So what's a day in the life? You get up in the morning, you say, hey, babe, or don't, like, do you guys all get to see him at the same time? Then do you get to have activities? Like, I bet grooming is something that you had to do.
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of time spent at the salon, especially because we were all bleaching our hair, had to get our roots done. But, I would wake up usually earlier than him, and we had the days free to do what we want as long as we weren't out with other guys or, working apparently. And I was finding ways to fill the time over the years. Like I started taking classes again at UCLA and started working at the Playboy studio eventually after being there for a couple of years. So I produced the Playmate shoots and I kept myself busy for sure.
And obviously you got paid. He paid you or no?
Well, you would get like a clothing allowance of
Okay.
like $1,000 a week. And I tried to save as much of that as I could. Like I tried to be as slick about it as I could and save. And after, a few years there, I was putting down payments on my first investment properties and going to school for real estate investment. So I definitely was conscientious of, this probably isn't going to last forever. So
yeah. What did your parents think?
They didn't know what was going on for a long time. Like when I finally admitted to them I was living there, I think they thought it was kind of like some sort of modeling thing. And my dad came down to visit and I gave him a tour of the house during the day and like Hef was busy in the office and he goes, oh, so does Hef actually live here? And I'm like, yeah.
And what did he say?
He didn't ask any more questions than that. I just don't think they thought of it as what it was. And it wasn't something I would have felt comfortable like confiding in anybody. It was something that I felt very confused about the whole relationship and didn't really feel there was anyone I could confide in until my friend Bridget moved into the house a couple of years later. And we've been close friends ever since. We do a podcast together now. But she was really the only person I confided in for so long.
Oh my gosh. And probably because you're trying to process, I'm sure there's probably still so much stuff now that you're processing like, oh my gosh, was this coercion or was this and I mean, in your book, Down the Rabbit Hole, you're open about the group sex in the mansion and how you hated it. I mean, when you think about that in the moment, what did you think was true? And then now, with the, obviously hindsight's 2020, what do you really view as what was going down?
Well, I knew I was miserable at the time. It didn't take much longer after moving in before I realized I was miserable. But at the time, I blamed it on the other women. And there were some people there who weren't angels. But the way that whole situation was set up and manipulated, I always felt like it was the other women out to get me and them causing problems. And there was some of that going on for sure. But it wasn't until the relationship was almost over that I realized he was, pulling the strings there and really pitting people against each other and things like that.
What you mean? He was actually, how did you find that out? Like, was he kind of like shady boots? Like, what was he?
100% shady boots. I love that.
At 70?
Yeah. And that was why it was so hard for me to process is I just remember being so young at the time and, I didn't have any concept of duality. I thought if you were old, you must be mature. Right?
I know. No, seriously. I mean, you would assume that a senior would have some sense about him. But damn, he's out there being messy with the girls.
100%.
That's crazy. Very scandalous.
I know.
So, I mean, how do you make sense of consent now? Because, or I'll even ask this. Before then, what was your idea of consent? And then after that experience, what do you think? Like, how did you, because I'm sure it disrupted your idea of consent. So, like, what do you think of it now?
I mean, I didn't think about it much at all before then. I think, we're thinking so much more into it in detail these days,
That's right.
and how you need to speak up for yourself and everything because, yeah, lines get blurred, definitely. And I think people make a lot of assumptions on both sides.
I mean, especially in a situation where the power dynamics are so severe. I mean, you think about somebody like Hef. How did he control the room? Was there a way that he would go about it that you look back and say, oh, that was manipulation, or this was him keeping us in our place?
Yeah, it was a lot of, comparing girls or making like negative comments to you, in front of other people or telling me, oh, this girl said this about you and, finding out later that wasn't true. It was just little things like that, but things that have a bigger impact.
I do also have to say, I mean, these tights I just got a glimpse of with this line in the back. So fabulous.
Thank you.
I'm getting into the details of this look.
I don't know where it's like.
It's giving. That's why she was in that mansion. Because mama is hot. I live.
So are you.
Thank you. Now, what myths do you still see floating around about the Playboy Mansion and Hef that you feel need to be shattered?
Oh my God.
Baby, this is Keke Palmer, yeah.
Y'all, I am still thinking about this incredible girls trip I took a while back at this amazing Airbnb. When I tell you we lived our best lives, the spot had this gorgeous backyard jacuzzi, and our host was so sweet, walking us through how to get those jets just right. We had in-house massages all day, and the kind of peace and quiet you can only get when you have the whole place to yourself. That's exactly what I love about Airbnb. You can search through their guest favorites to find some highly rated, most loved homes that give you the space to truly celebrate your way. And this 4th of July, whether you're looking for a spot with a spacious deck made for family barbecues, a cozy living room for late night card games, or prime locations to catch these fireworks, these homes hit different. And child, having your own space means celebrating without worrying about hotel neighbors. So, this Independence Day, declare your freedom from ordinary vacations. Book an Airbnb and create memories that will have you feeling patriotic all year long. Trust me, it's the kind of celebrating that'll have you saying, God bless America and Airbnb. This episode is brought to you by Saks. Hold up, let me put you on to something major. Your summer just got a whole lot more luxurious because Saks Fifth Avenue is now on Amazon. Whether you're hunting for that perfect John Batista Valley dress for your bestie's botanical backyard brunch, or that stunning etro caftan for your Amalfi Coast getaway, Saks on Amazon has got all your summer moments covered. I'm literally obsessed with this new Balmain beach tote that I've been eyeing for my next summer vacay. And it's not just the vacation fits. We're talking effortless luxury for every moment with Stella McCartney's new sustainable sundresses, some must-have D&G sunglasses, and all the designer handbags and beauty products you need to serve all season long. From brunch to boardwalk, rooftop parties to resort pools, Saks has curated the perfect edit for every summer scenario. Have you seen their weekend wear collection? With these pieces, you'll be giving certified head-turner status on every boulevard. And don't even get me started on their accessories. Your girl is adding those new Balmain sandals to cart expeditiously. The cherry on top, it's the luxury shopping experience you love from Saks. With that easy Amazon delivery we all live for. Get the Saks designer brands you love delivered just like that. New on Amazon.
My mind is so open now after talking about all the things I've talked about that I'm always leave space for, what something could be true and I just don't know. Like the one I love to talk about is people talk about there being tunnels under the mansion that like went to Diddy's house supposedly. And I'm like, not to my knowledge. Like, could there have been tunnels that I don't know about?
Friends?
Maybe. Well, also like the story doesn't really make sense too because I don't think he moved to that neighborhood till like 2014 and Hef was like, not really that active at that. This was long after I was gone, but but I don't know. As far as I know, no tunnels, anytime I say that, people get mad in the comments like, she knows and she's a tunnel denier. I'm like, I would be the first to tell you if there are tunnels. Trust me.
That would be a trip.
I know.
Now, in People magazine, you said, I thought leaving would be the end of my life. Instead, it was the beginning. What's something that began for you the moment that you walked away? And when you said the end of my life, what did you think that meant?
Not necessarily, not like the end of my life, but I just felt like I was giving up any, kind of thing I had gained, any small thing I had gained over the 7 years I was there. I thought, I was completely starting from scratch, like I'd saved a little bit of money, but not much. And what I gained after that is just faith in myself because I was able to start again out of nowhere and, be successful and have a career right after that. So
How was the process of leaving? What did it look like?
it was me having a conversation with him after like a couple months of, thinking about it and finally being sure. And he was trying to get me to stay. And he was like leaving his will out on his bed so I could read it and see how much was in there. Which
Like,
is
baby, I'm not 21 anymore.
I know.
How old were you by that time?
29.
Oh,
Yeah.
the same tricks don't work.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was very awkward, even the time it took just to pack up my stuff and finish filming for the show. It was an awkward couple of months.
We're talking so much about Hef and love and all that stuff, but I'm very curious, how did that experience change your relationship or impact your relationship with women? Because you're in there with all those women and you know what I mean? There's such a subtle like competition aspect. Like, how did that impact you?
You know what's interesting is you'd look at that and you would think that I don't trust women and that I'm always very careful, but it hasn't changed that at all. Like female friendships have been so important to me always. And from the second I left the mansion and moved to Vegas, I immediately had a new friend group and I've been screwed over by a couple women since then, but I've just never like hardened to that. I've just always, it's been super important to have those friendships.
Well, even hearing you talk, it feels like you have so much like observation from it and like almost even like compassion for yourself in the situation because you've often said it's kind of cult-like. So I imagine it was pretty hard to leave. What gave it that cult vibe?
Well, it's just this world where it's kind of a high-stakes environment where you're entering as a young person and you could gain a lot. You could gain money, you could gain fame, whatever, or at least you think you can. And everybody in the social circle is just so adoring of this one person who can do no wrong. And you can't even say like the slightest thing without getting like ostracized, So it kind of gives you like a cult-like kind of mentality.
And it creates this process where you're kind of lying to yourself.
100%.
Because it's like nobody's that perfect. And if I can't be truthful out loud, I mean, like, did you ever feel a moment in time where you were like, this is delusional? You had to kind of wake yourself back up to what you authentically thought and felt about situations?
Definitely. And that was something that came to me even in time after I left. It didn't happen right away. It was something that took a couple years, I feel like. Even I'd been away for a couple years and I went back to this, coffee table book we had made for the Girls Next Door show because I wanted to find some photo of some costume or something. And I'm looking through it and maybe the outsider wouldn't be able to look at these pictures of me and tell, but I could tell, like, I have the fakest smile right now. Like, I'm so miserable and I'm doing this fake smile. And then it just all kind of came back and I was just looking back at it in a different way. When I left, I didn't look in the rearview mirror at all. I was all thinking about my future and I was just trying to tie the past up in the most positive way I could and just tie a nice little bow on it. But then when I finally looked back, I was like, holy this was like way deeper than I even acknowledged at the time.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that so interesting how our subconscious protects us?
Yeah.
It's like the higher us is protecting, the front facing us more than we even know because once we out of the situation, we actually realized what we were hiding from ourselves that we needed to survive from.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
You're 100% right. It's just, you're just trying to get through that phase as best you can.
Oh my gosh, I'm really happy for you. I'm
Thank
proud
you
of you
so much.
getting out of that because it's really tough, especially with so many people validating it. I mean, when you left, did Bridget leave or what was that? What was happening with her? Oh, she was in the house, Bridget was.
Yeah. Kendra had already decided to leave and Bridget was leaving temporarily to film a different show. And I don't think she had planned to leave yet. I think she thought she had a couple more years going. But after I left, I think she felt uncomfortable because then there were other girls moving in, taking my place. And I think she felt like this isn't really for me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, how was it filming The Girls Next Door? Like when you look at it now, how was that experience? Like, can you watch it now?
Yeah, I'm actually doing a rewatch podcast called Girls Next Level. So we go deep into it and there's a lot to analyze and there's definitely a lot I'd complain about. But for the most part, that show was a really great opportunity and it took what was a really bleak situation and turned it into something better. Even just everyday life was better. Like Hef even was really into the show and he was so focused on the show. He wasn't focused on any of the other petty stuff as much. So it really improved like all aspects of our life, really.
Oh,
so it was a
that.
blessing.
We love a job.
Yeah.
Now, your reality show, Holly's World, it premiered in 2009. And I mean, it really marked a turning point for you, going from girlfriend to boss. How did that help you take your power back? What was the journey of getting there?
It was interesting because I wasn't really doing any of the inner work because I was so just hitting the ground running. And it's like, I have to like start from scratch and build a whole new career. So that kind of came later when I got into writing my book. But I was just so excited to be in Vegas. I was headlining a burlesque show, which was what I wanted to do, and doing my own TV show. And I was just having the time of my life. It was one of my favorite chapters for
Now,
sure.
were you always a dancer? Or
No.
So it just kind of happened along this journey?
Yeah. My
love
talent
it.
is selling tickets, not dancing.
I know that's right. Selling tickets, yes. So what did you think that Vegas gave you at that time? I mean, and it could be the burlesque show, and it could have been, it could be, Holly's World. But what do you think that experience from going from LA and everything that was connected to? How did going to Vegas kind of separate you from that?
I really love the spirit of that city. You know, everybody there's a hustler. Everybody there I feel like there's an optimism about being in Vegas and working in Vegas. And we opened a show at a time when it was like right after the 2008 recession. So it was like the worst time you could try to do anything in Vegas, but we made it work. We made it a hit. And just everybody, knows how to survive there. And I just love that.
Baby, this is Keke Palmer, yeah.
Tell me why Tropical Smoothie Cafe has your girl feeling more blessed than Sierra's prayer with only the freshest smoothies, bowls, and made-to-order wraps. Tropical Smoothie Cafe is serving exactly what you need to turn your everyday into a mini vacation. Now, they did not come to play, y'all. The naturally sweetened detox island green smoothie at Tropical Smoothie Cafe, it has spinach, kale, mango, pineapple, banana, and fresh ginger. You name it. That Caribbean jerk chicken wrap with the kale and apple slaw upgrade. Ooh, yes, honey. Eating your fruits and veggies has never been this fun. It's serving exactly what I serve at every Met Gala. Pure excellence. So go on, order ahead, take the scenic route, and earn rewards with the Tropical Smoothie Cafe app. Download it today or visit tropicalsmoothiecafe.com to find a cafe near you. You're on Tropic Time now at Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Baby, I have never, and I mean never, been more devastated than when I found out that some of y'all been sneaking around behind Domino's back just to get your stuffed crust fix. Now, you know us Virgos are incredibly loyal, steadfast even. Cheating, especially on something as serious as Parmesan stuffed crust pizza, ain't gonna fly in this house. I saw y'all slide into those other pizza spots drive-thrus, ordering that cheese-filled crust like Domino's, and I wouldn't find out about your little rendezvous. But sweetie, the healing starts today because Domino's just dropped their own stuffed crust, and now y'all got no excuse to keep stepping out on them like this. It's time to put those pizza cheating ways to rest. Domino's new Parmesan stuffed crust is serving pure decadence with that buttery, handmade dough wrapped around a cascading stream of 100% melty goodness. These are the cheese pools of your dreams. It's very much a Goofy movie level of ooey gooey cheesy deliciousness. Ooh. And of course, your girl can't forget about that signature garlic seasoning and Parmesan sprinkle dance on top of that perfectly baked crust, making every single taste like it was blessed by the pizza gods themselves. You can think about it now. I'm already imagining the parm stuffed pie I've been plotting on. Next time I'm placing my order, you best believe I'm having mushrooms, grilled onions, and some extra peppers just to, keep the vegetables on top. Now, this is the kind of commitment I'm talking about. No more pizza cheating needed when Domino's is bringing this level of excellence to the table. Order Domino's new Parmesan stuffed crust pizza on the Domino's app and use code KIKI to get any 3-topping Parmesan stuffed crust pizza for $11.99. Price is higher for some locations. You must ask for this limited time offer. Prices, participation, delivery area, and charges may vary. Delivery orders subject to local store's delivery charge. Holla at your girl. You said something interesting about, you left, you really didn't understand the impact. You did Holly's World, did the burlesque show. You still weren't all the way, because you hadn't taken time. You were kind of just working, hitting the ground running. What was the first time that you truly felt ownership of your story, that you were actually kind of now the observer of what you had to survive through?
Definitely when I wrote my book in 2015, I decided to write it because every single day of my life, I would go out and somebody would come up to me and say, "How's Hef? How's he doing?" And I would always give some kind of positive answer just because I thought that was the nice thing to do, even though by this point I wasn't even speaking to him and, we'd had a falling out and he was off making snarky comments. But for some reason, I felt like this responsibility to still be like the cheerleader of that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it anymore. I just felt like I don't want to keep selling this relationship I was in that was really toxic and that I wouldn't recommend to anybody else. Like I need to tell the truth about it. And I'm glad I did.
I am too, and I think as a performer, any type of performer, look, first of all, I believe every person that's human is performing. We have to
100%.
always perform humanity. It's kind of like the construct of social structures. But in that, you can lose yourself in the performance of who you think you're supposed to be. And I think that's like a really big part of self-actualization is like, well, I'm different from who I'm showing up as. Like there's another person that's deep inside that only I know. How has your relationship with performance changed? Like how do you view it? Because you're obviously still entertaining, do those things. But how have you created more healthy boundaries for yourself within that performance?
Well, I think for me, one of the healthiest things I did was I was bored during quarantine. So I started a TikTok and a YouTube channel. And I just felt like those were kind of the first places I could like look at the camera and just be myself and speak candidly. Even when I was doing reality shows, even when I was doing my own reality show, when I was in that confessional chair, I always felt like I was still playing this role, this other version of Holly. So that was a really positive thing for me. And I feel like I can just be candid now. And I still have boundaries. Like I don't talk about my kids or like post my kids' faces on social media, things like that are important like that. But other than that, I just feel like I'm an open book and I like being that way.
Now, you mentioned your book, obviously, Down the Rabbit Hole, dropped in 2015. That wasn't just a memoir. It was a mic drop.
Yeah.
What gave you the courage, truly, to just tell the truth like that? And were there at any point did you think I'm going to get sued? Or were, this is NDAs? Or how did you prepare yourself for all of that?
Well, it wasn't really a question of courage. It was more just I felt like I had to do it. It was something I was being approached about and asked about every day. And I just felt like I was living a lie, kind of trying to tell this like shiny, happy, positive story. And you start to make yourself sick over it. Like you feel sick in your gut. So I just felt I have to do this. I don't even care. And the publishing company I worked with had a really great legal team that worked with me. So I learned a lot from that. And now I feel confident saying whatever I say on my podcast and YouTube, because I've just been doing this for so long. So,
and then the other thing about it too is like, because there were so many other people involved, when you speak out and you tell your truth, then it kind of exposes them. So how did you feel and how was your experience with the other women that were with you in the mansion? If they didn't want those things heard, did they reach out? Were they upset? What was the backlash there, if there was any?
A lot of people were upset, not necessarily women specifically about what I said, because most of the women who lived there before we did the TV show, I just changed their names and their identifying characteristics. So there's some deniability for it for them. But a lot of people who'd been in the magazine at all or attached to Playboy were mad about it because, they still see that as such a huge part of their identity and how they're known. And they just don't want anything bad being said about it.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about your children specifically because I respect you wanting to be private, but I know you had your daughter in 2013, your son in 2016. I want to know how motherhood, changed these things for you. Because for me, when I had my son, I saw everything about my life so much clearer. Yeah. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the hormones. I don't know, like, if it was just also me maturing because of having to take care of a little person. But it really changed how I viewed my life. Yeah. How did it impact you?
I think part of, wanting to be more of an open book and more real with people is inspired by parenthood as well.
Yeah.
And just, wanting to keep it real for your kids and everything like that. Also, it gives me healthy boundaries. Like ever since I got divorced, I only dated one person, but I didn't even introduce that guy to my kids at all because they're like my number one and I wouldn't introduce them to anybody unless I was like engaged. So I love that I have those boundaries and, they really like, examples like that. It's just like kids enrich your life in ways that you don't even know.
When you think about autonomy and your relationship with it, what's something that you would want to make sure that your kids know that maybe you didn't know or that you arrived to, that you wish you'd maybe arrived to sooner?
Just to have faith in yourself and don't make decisions based off of fear. I think I was doing a lot of that in my early years.
It's just, I feel like it's so a part of our lives. We all, it's like, what else do you know? You don't know. People always talk about self-esteem being high or low. And I don't believe that. I believe talk to my therapist about this. Shout out to you. That self-esteem is always growing. Yeah. Because I can't know I don't like something until I've tried it.
100%.
So it's like having that patience with ourselves. It's so, it's like, I gotta know what I don't like to know what I love.
Yeah.
That's just a part of it. You can't get around it. Something else that was interesting to me that you've discovered, as you gotten older is autism, that you have autism. How did you even go about saying, let me get checked for it?
I always knew there was something different about me, but I blamed it on growing up really isolated in Alaska, even though my sister's not like that at all. So it doesn't really make sense. But that was always kind of where my headspace was at. But about 5 years ago, my mom mentioned to me and to my ex-husband that she always suspected I had Asperger's. And she said one of the first symptoms was I would just zone out a lot as a kid. I would just lock onto something and just completely like be on another planet. And she didn't know what was going on. And then I started looking that up and seeing what some of the symptoms were and thought that sounded like
Girl,
me.
tell me the symptoms because I zone out.
Well, there's that. There's not understanding social cues, not making eye contact, which I can do now, but that's more of a learned thing. Stims, like my big thing was I was always, and you can go back and see it on my old shows, I'm like constantly playing with my hair, things like that.
I feel like so many of us are discovering that we have some type of neurodivergency. I don't know if it's because like there was shame with our parents in the past, and when the teacher's like, they got this, they got that, and they're like, no. I don't know. It's very interesting to me. Or maybe it's because we all have social media and we can talk about these things and it's giving us the resource to find answers. I mean, when you came to that, was it a relief or was it a
No, it was 100% a relief. I feel like I could address issues I felt I had with social interactions and stuff better because I understand it more.
Was it a lens that helped heal you? I mean, I guess you don't know who you would have, who you are without that, but do you feel like that was I don't want to say it was the reason for things, but did you feel like it gave you kind of like that's...
Yeah, it helped me
especially
understand.
with the Hef stuff. Or,
it helped me understand some of the reasoning. It helped me understand why I felt, in part, like I bonded with him so much. Part of that was because I never bonded with people my own age or guys my own age, really. Like I had a boyfriend in high school, but it never felt very deep or very connected. And, all it took was one guy who's really good at charming and manipulating for me to feel like, oh, well, maybe I'm supposed to be with an older person. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always helpful to get any insight onto how you operate, I think.
Yeah, I'm always looking into myself too. I mean, you just want to know how to be the best you. And it's funny because it's like a book that it never stops writing itself.
Totally.
So the list just gets longer. I want to talk about the latest season of your series, The Playboy Murders. It premiered in May and explores the dark side of fame, exploitation, and the Playboy brand. I mean, what made you want to go into true crime and about something that could possibly be quite triggering for you?
I've always been incredibly interested in true crime content. I grew up on unsolved mysteries. That was my favorite thing I got to watch when I was allowed to. And when this show was pitched to me at first, I didn't want to do it because I was like, I've done too many Playboy things. I'm like up to my ears in it. But they showed me the deck on the cases they wanted to cover, and they were cases I hadn't even heard about. And I thought I knew everything about anybody who'd ever been involved in Playboy. And I was like, this is a show I would actually watch. So I really wanted to be involved, and we're on our 3rd season now. And it's been so rewarding to be able to tell these stories and talk about the women and the victims more than just a pretty face or just a centerfold or a Playboy bunny.
Yeah. I mean, how do you emotionally prepare for it if you have to? I mean, I don't know how dark and how deep it gets, but is there a moment where whenever you're doing true crime stuff, it's like it can be heavy?
Yeah, you definitely have to pace yourself when you're doing that kind of work. And I try to just approach it from a way of like, if I were that victim, how would I want my story told?
Yeah.
And try to be as empathetic as I can through that lens.
What kind of comments and feedback do you guys get from the viewers? Or what do women take away the most, you think?
Oh, people love the stories because you have that intersection of, the story itself and the crime itself, and then this really interesting world that these people come from. I also do a show called Lethally Blonde that's similar type of stories. They're not Playboy specific.
Come on, Lethally Blonde.
Yeah.
Play.
But yeah, the stories are really interesting because the people involved always come from a really interesting world or a really interesting background or something else we can explore.
What sign are you, Holly?
I'm a Capricorn.
Yes, my perfect match, Capricorn and Virgo. Yes. So when you think about yourself, I mean, you've done such an incredible job, whether with Playboy or just with your own personal brand. I mean, you've continuously branched your brand out in all these different categories. Did you see this for yourself? I mean, did you automatically feel like, I'm meant to be somebody in this particular way, like as an entertainer or somebody that's taken center stage?
What's weird is I would always see when I was a teenager, like things people were doing in the public eye. And I always knew I wanted to have this career where I started out like in Playboy as like a glamour model and then went into TV in some way. But I always assumed I would be like hosting a show or something. I didn't know it was going to be reality and then true crime. So it's weird that I got exactly where I wanted to go, but in such a weird way. Like, what even is that?
That's God, girl. He be
I
doing
know.
anything up there. I want to talk about freedom and legacy.
Uh-huh.
How do you define freedom now?
Freedom is being able to do what you want when you want, which you can't always do. You
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
compromise for people somewhere along the line. But for the most part, being able to do what you enjoy and what you find rewarding.
What would you say to that girl, that 21-year-old girl that walked into the Playboy Mansion? What would you say to her if you could say something to her now about freedom or about anything?
I'd say hold the on. 'Cause it's going to get rough and take a lot of pictures.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think sometimes those questions people want to hear an answer like, oh, I'd tell her not to do this or not to do that. But even though like things were rough and miserable at times, like I truly believe this was the journey I was supposed to go on, even if it was just to tell my story and warn other people or give other people a perspective.
As your parents started watching the show, or even family and friends from back home in general, what was the feedback that you would be getting in real time?
People from back home wouldn't really give me any feedback. And that's kind of a scary thought. Like maybe they thought this is awful and we're just not going to say anything. So I don't really know. I wasn't really getting feedback. I just remember, this was when I first stumbled across like message boards on the E! Network site. And, you think you're the only one being talked about because we all see like all the talking and stuff. And that was like kind of devastating, in my earlier 20s. But, I've learned to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's only gotten increasingly worse. I mean, now you're also in an influencer era.
Mhm.
How do you think those earlier reality show years prepared you for this now?
It definitely prepared me for it. I worry about like the next generation. I hope that the next generation actually just has a thicker skin. They're like, we grew up with this. We don't care. These
Yeah.
might as well be bots talking about us. I hope that's what I hope for the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real thing too is most of the time everybody's just trying to get a laugh. That's one thing that I'd learned because I grew up, performing in the era too where there wasn't much stuff online. Like when I had a MySpace or a Facebook, it was private. It wasn't until my teenage years that started being something that became a part of my job.
Yeah.
And now I think it's like hopefully we're getting to the point where we can tell the difference. And it's not something that really moves us or impacts us in a way that I think it initially did.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Whenever we go through like traumatic events, obviously there's a piece of us that we still hold on to. And sometimes it could be a person, like you mentioned, Bridget. For some people it's God or their faith or an activity or something that holds on to the version of them that just, is pure and that not affected. It helps them to stay grounded. What helped you stay grounded, you think?
I always had this weird faith that like everything was going to turn out okay. Even though in my mind it wasn't. In my mind I had all these worries like what happens if this? What happens if that? I was constantly scared of like getting kicked out or whatever. But I always had this weird faith kind of above it all that if I just kept going and just kept my head down and working toward my goals that everything was going to be okay. And I'm kind of like spiritual in a weird way. And I almost feel like that was a future version of myself telling myself that.
I have believed stuff like that too.
Yeah.
I remember moments in my life as a performer where I realized, like even in my own household, that I just couldn't be me for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I was not being accepted, and I thought to myself that there'll be a time where I can take the mask off and I can show everybody who I really am, and that I know what's going on, and they'll like have to accept it because I won't be a kid anymore.
I love that.
And I just held on to it. I think it was my higher self too that was like, "Girl, I'll be here waiting when you're there."
Yeah, I love that.
I mean? Yeah. You said before you didn't want to be remembered as someone's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you've changed that narrative now?
I don't know. I think people always like to go back to that. I don't care about it as much as I used to. You just can't really control those things.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
What made you stop caring?
I think one thing I realized, and this is looking at Hef himself, is he was so obsessed with his own legacy and what was he going to leave behind and what were people going to think of him? And he was constantly producing documentaries about himself and making all these scrapbooks and having books written about himself. And his legacy didn't turn out like what he wanted at all. So you can't control your legacy. You just can't. It's out of your hands.
You really can't.
Yeah.
Do you think in that process of watching him, I'm curious now that you were talking about all the different things he was doing, that you learned anything about production, about brand management, about, did he share that with you guys? Or did he try to keep you guys out of that? Or do you feel you benefited from watching his business?
Definitely benefited from watching his business. I worked with him for several years too when I worked at the Playboy Studios. I produced all the Playmate layouts and the job was amazing and the work relationship was amazing. Personal relationship, not so much, but
yeah. But that I would only imagine. I'm glad I wouldn't know if he kept that part away from you guys for particular reasons, or if you got a chance to kind of really at least learn something from that.
Yeah, no, I think I learned a lot, probably more than I even could reference.
To anyone else that might be feeling trapped in their own story, the facing identity of who they are, what is something, as someone that has, I think, successfully changed the narrative around them, what piece of advice would you give to someone else?
I would always say, don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you have that one friend you want to confide in and, get some of their feedback and look, I'm not feeling authentic. I'm not feeling, what can I try that's different, that feels authentic? And then just follow that.
Well, I love that. I love talking to you, and I'm just so glad. Like, I can talk to you for hours because you're such an interesting person. And I'm really glad that you came on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yes, that was a word, okay? Big love to Holly for keeping it real and reminding us that healing ain't always soft. It's sharp, it's loud, and it's necessary. From the mansion to the mic, she is showing us what it looks like to take your power back and use it for good. So whether you're out here rewriting your own story, setting new boundaries, or just learning to listen to your gut, take this as your sign. You don't owe the world your silence. Now go on and hit play on Holly's Girls Next Level podcast if you haven't already, and watch Playboy Murders, and keep speaking your truth, because somebody out there needs to hear it. Until next time, holla at your girl.
Baby, this is Keke.